Jim, can you hear us? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's not real loud, but I can hear you.
Okay, I can. That better?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We don't have a quorum yet. We need one more. Have you
Oh.
heard, other than Debbie and Farley, who may not be here?
No, just those two.
Yeah. Yeah, that takes a little while sometimes. We have quorum. Okay. It's fine. Okay. We have a quorum. I'll call the meeting to order at 9:32. We have two absences that we know of, Farley and Debbie. And so Debbie being gone, I'll be the chair. The first order of business is public comment. I don't see anybody online, and our two people in the audience are speakers. So here, seeing no public comment, we'll move on. Oh, okay. And Joan is a presenter today, I believe. Yes. Okay, we'll move on to approval of minutes for the March 5th meeting. Any corrections? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval as presented. Second.
And
Second.
moved, seconded by Barb. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Next item is financial reports.
Right. And we still don't have either January or February. I think the last I heard from our accountant, they were waiting for, there's a letter that comes from the El Paso County Treasurer that actually shows the amount of projected tax revenue that we usually would get in February.
Mhm.
And we had gotten an indication from them that they would have it out by March 10th. I checked about a week ago. It's still not available. And I think they're waiting for that. But I will just report that the balance at the end of February in our bank account was $800,000 and some change. And that basically what we've paid in the first 2 months is a fair amount of money for snow plowing, snow
Right.
removal, which isn't surprising. Gym, of course, and then a November and December invoice to Holting. So not much activity, but we should have something next.
Okay, without the full reports, no action needed on this item. So we'll move on to old business. The strategic communications plan contract. Jim, do you want to go over that?
Yeah, I assume Carol is in the audience. I can't see that far. Hi, Carol. So I'll defer to Carol a little bit, but the long and short of it is, this contract you see was put together really between David, Neville, myself, and Carol. And so it meets the legal test. And it kind of looks exactly kind of like my contract. So it's very similar. The last page, Exhibit A, will give you the cost breakdown, which Carol is basically including 30 hours for basic web update. And I'll let her tell you what she's been working on. But that's for $4,500. And then actually just the meeting attendance, because the board requested that Carol come to every meeting. So that's projected at a monthly rate of 1.5 hours at $150. Carol, if you have anything else to add to that, or there's any questions.
Thank you. So Jim's accurate. We haven't signed the contract yet, but I did go ahead and get everything started. We've gone through, fixed the broken links, spent some time with the designer yesterday, got the map corrected. Jim has updated copy that he's made changes to and brought back to me. And then actually, I think we can include in the budget an update of the video within the money that we've already allocated. So, love thoughts and recommendations of people we should interview. Just to give you a refresher, on the original website, we had interviewed Corrine Toll, and then the woman who at the time was redeveloping the Dillon Motel. If there's some folks that we could interview to talk about successes, some of the people I think of are like Shanti around arts. Farley, of course, is always good because of her build out. I don't know if Tim Lee is an appropriate person to talk to. Was he part of the Holiday Inn build out? Okay. Okay.
You probably want to interview Avik Amin.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Avik Amin is the owner of the Holiday Inn.
Can you get me some contact information? Because we can get that sort of scheduled out. Holiday Inn. And then we have also sent Jim a list of photographs we'll take. We have not scheduled that photo date yet, but that's been approved. So we're getting updated pictures of all the artworks, the streetscape, the Holiday Inn, Farley's Place, some of the other things that have happened in the corridor. So that'll get scheduled probably within the next 2 weeks to get those photos together to update on the website. We'll get the video set. I have a call later today with the web designer to work through Jim's copy points, the copy points that I put together and that he sent back with changes. And then one of the other things we suggested, we've never had a picture of the MS URA board on that, but I think that's not a bad idea. I don't know if you guys would like it as a group or individual. We could do either or and both. And I wonder if it's appropriate to have brief bios as well. I thought I'd run that by where we suggested that. Okay.
I'm good with that too.
Okay. Okay. I know, right? A good camera, good hair day. So why don't, Jim, I will send to you, because I can make the bio really easy. I'll put together a series of questions that you can just answer and then I'll edit it. Bio questions. And then probably what we could do is do it after a board meeting. I don't think it's critical that it happen immediately. So we could do it at the May board meeting, should work. So photos. Okay. And that's largely, it's moving really quickly. Finding the links that were broken, getting things fixed, getting things updated has been really pretty easy. So, yeah.
Any questions, board members, comments? Jim, I think we need a motion to approve the contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, you sure do.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to
So
approve.
move.
Okay, Alan. For a second. Barb, okay, moved and seconded to approve the Medwood Women Communications Plan contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is carried. Tree planting update. Is Matthew here? Don't see Matthew. Will we?
No, John, I didn't think he really needed to be there. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. He got bids. He got a bid to do 13 trees along the creek walk like he talked about last month. And that was $4,897 and some change. He also looked at, I think we discussed possible planting by the Dillon Motel, and he basically came back with a site that he thought they could plant 2 trees on, 2 crabapple trees. I thought, and John agreed, that I thought that was pretty premature and that we'd like to see a site plan first as to what's going on that site and where plantings could occur. And so we kind of agreed that maybe that project shouldn't happen until after we at least have a site plan and know where these trees might be the most appropriate location, and maybe even after the site work has occurred. So That's kind of where that is. So I kind of put the brakes on the other two trees.
Any questions or comments? I'll make one comment. At Alan's suggestion, I met with the parking manager a couple of weeks ago, and he shared with me the 4 options that are currently being looked at for the Dillon. I don't know what the approval process or timing is, but all of them included a 10-foot landscape strip along Manitou Avenue. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity to plant trees. Waiting until we get a final design and see what that might look like, I think is appropriate.
John, did they have any like placement of benching or anything like that? Any seating?
There isn't enough detail at this point. It's mostly a conceptual, how many parking spaces can we
I think
get?
it would be
Which
nice.
buildings do we keep type of thing?
Whether it's the city side or our side, maybe there's a nice bench or two in that area. People are waiting for transportation into town.
Well, and that's a good idea. And I suggested, number one, that they have a public process, and number two, that they have some sort of a plaza out front that would include a bike ride station and some other transportation, mobility, interaction availability. He did say that one of the buildings they intend to have for storage of bikes and other things that people may ride into town and then take the shuttle into town. So, but I don't think any of these plans are finalized yet.
I just maybe keep that in the back of our minds that we
Mhm.
might participate in.
Well, I think it would be a
Some
great
additional
idea. I
organized-
suggested that at appropriate time, they make a presentation to us and get our input. But again, it's not clear what that process is.
Yeah.
Planning staff was there as well, so I think that was helpful. Thanks, Alan, for that suggestion.
Well, I think aren't we okay with the trees?
Yeah, do we need, I think we already
Plan for that.
planned for this. We authorized expenditure up to 5,000 at the last meeting, so I think we're fine on this item. Okay, next is Executive Director report, Jim.
Okay, let me find it. Here somewhere. There you go. Okay, so basically what we just talked about, coordinating with Matthew on the tree locations, made some revisions to the MOU with the city, and that, by the way, is on the council agenda for tonight. John, I assume you're going to attend in person, and I believe David Neville will be there also. I'll join, via Zoom, and we'll see where that goes. It's a discussion item. I don't know what council's intent. I haven't heard anything. I talked to Denise about it, and the staff seems to be okay with it, and so is the city attorney. So I guess we'll just see how that shakes out tonight. Let's see. The other thing, meeting with Carol, as she discussed, we got the scope of services lined out. Nothing new really happening on the LaFawn. I've been talking with Rich. They've kind of want to meet as soon as possible with the new planning director. And he should be on board, I believe, this week, maybe last week. So, we'll try to set that up so that we can get a discussion going about the idea of doing some affordable housing and housing in general on the LaFawn site. A little bit of correspondence with the Martin property potential owners. I haven't heard anything real lately about it. So I'm not sure if the car repair place is a go or not. And so that's about it. And then, of course, we have on the agenda today a presentation or request for a grant from Bob Wilcox for money to do a new roof on the car museum. And those are kind of the things I've been working on this month.
Okay, any questions, Jim? Comments? Okay, thanks, Jim. Next item is new business, and the first one is the car museum grant request by Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Wilcox, if you'd like to join us up here and make a presentation, or Jim, would you want to summarize first your discussion?
Well, okay, so yeah, I just, Bob asked me about this and said, you know, would this qualify? And looking under the terms of the grant application, roofing is actually something that's included in the description of work. Now, is it that aesthetically great? No, you're not going to see it. But it does qualify, and I thought, well, since it's qualified, Bob should go ahead and make the application. He has 2 bids on it, and I'll let him talk about it. So Bob, you're on.
Roof leaks, needs a new roof. That's all I've got to say.
Could you explain how much you're requesting and
Oh, I've had
Wasn't-
bids.
Yeah,
from-
excuse me, could you, if you're not within a couple inches of the mic, then the people who are watching online can't hear you. And this is,
They hear me or not?
well, then you're out of order, I think, if you're not going to let the public hear what you're doing. I don't see how we can make a rational decision.
About my roof.
It's public money that's being expended.
Right, so I've got bids that start at 70,000 and go down to 40,000. One of them wants to remove the car museum sign that's on the facade of the building, the above roof line that I have a variance from zoning for from years ago. His idea is that the roof would be easier to repair if we took those superstructures out that support that sign. The roof is a concrete, it's what they call a tip-up building, so it's pre-stressed concrete. So what they did was knock holes through the roof and pressure plate angle iron to support that sign. So over the course of 60 years, that has either worked loose or rotted, but that is the primary egress for water. So one guy proposes wrapping it and making a patch in essence. The other person proposes to remove the hardware and to remove the sign. And again, all I'm interested in is not having water come in the building. So whatever best facilitates that end result is what I am here to see if you guys are interested in talking to.
Hey, Bob, I'm Barbara Winter. I live up in Crystal Hills, so it's nice to meet you. Maybe just for my clarification, I mean, I used to go to the car museum when it was new
Right,
and see the race drivers.
right.
But how is that building used today?
It's my office and headquarters for my company, West Side Property Management.
Okay, so,
And I do all the bookkeeping at retail stores in Colorado Springs. I'm chief cook and bottle washer for that
okay,
operation.
and when you talk about the supports that might be removed off the roof,
Mm,
does that still have a sign on it?
yeah, such race car. movement.
But you would take that down. Is there any opportunity that a different kind of sign advertising our community might be put on there that would
Well,
be worthy at all?
your sign ordinance does not want signs above roof grade. As I said, I got a
variance?
dispensation from city council saying that it was okay to keep that sign because we identified it as a building location identifier. So,
But I mean, we could go before city council and maybe ask for a variance. I'm just saying,
well, you have the big city of Manitou sign right there by the.
is it right next to it?
Right.
I just didn't know if it would be a useful location to advertise ourselves. Carol, you have any thought about that? The top of the car museum where he has a car museum sign, would that be useful to any advertising for us, for the community? I mean, I'm just brainstorming.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a brainstorm thought that crossed my mind.
Yeah, I think it's probably a long shot. We've had requests in the past to veer from the sign ordinance that we updated last year. And I think it would be very difficult to get through because we've had some pretty significant ones like the chamber sign that weren't compliant. And
I think it's just such an unusual location though, because it's not signage visible from the streetscape. It's signage visible from the highway up the upper strata. And I just know, I think it's kind of an interesting spot personally, but I mean, I hear what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, it got batted around quite a bit at city council. And they pretty much said, we can't make these changes, or we might as well throw out our sign ordinance. And I think there's a lot of feeling within the community that we want to have subdued signs. So I think I'm just suggesting, just my experience from seeing these over the last several years, that it's probably be a very frustrating and not fruitful.
So John, it sounds like there's some possibility it will remain, that's one of the options. The existing
Kind
sign.
of up to
Yeah.
the sign contract or the sign roof contractor. What one proposes to remove it, one proposes
Right,
to
right.
leave it. And
So my feeling would be, it's actually kind of a historic sign. And I think,
well, that was the basis of it.
yeah, it either gets left or I think there's nothing there, would be my thought.
I just assumed it went away because it's becoming a maintenance problem.
Mm. Yep, they do.
My comment, that's a decision for Mr. Wilcox to make. And if he wants it removed, fine. If he wants to leave it, I guess that's fine as well. I would assume that since the variance has already been granted, if he changes the copy, that would be permissible. Should you choose to keep
Because I
it.
understand that I can rehabilitate it, but I can't modify it.
Okay, okay. Are there any other questions of Mr. Wilcox? Jim, could you review for us? We just went through a process where we determined what the qualifications were for a grant and the amount of participation and what have you. Could you summarize that for us before we deliberate further?
Yeah, the board agreed, I think, when we approved the changes, that you would fund up to 25,000 per grant request, but it would only be for half the amount of the grant request. So Bob sent us get two bids, and the low bid was 44,000. So for the roof, so half of that would be 22,000.
Okay, Alan?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Jim, can you recall the reason that we denied a request last year for a roof for Emerald Fields? It seems like they requested a very similar type of.
You know, Al, they did talk about it and they were going to come forward, but they never did. They never actually put a formal application together.
I guess.
I mean, the
Okay.
nature of the grant is obviously for aesthetics and for facade improvements and trying to make the corridor look better. But there's nothing really that precludes you from, doing structural things as well.
Comments, discussion? Ann?
Yeah, and it is highly visible from the highway for sure.
Mhm.
So I think it's an appropriate request.
Other comments?
No. So excuse me, my understanding is our motivation should be economic development. And is this really going to enhance it? To me, it seems like I struggle with what's general maintenance for a property owner and what's within our charter to, and I'm just, you know, if it's leaking inside, I'm skeptical that that's economic development.
Yeah, I don't think we get into that level of detail. I think what we have this program for is to incentivize property owners within the URA to make improvements to their property. And I don't think it's a lot more fine-tuned than that. And I think this meets that criterion. And I would actually move for approval up to 25,000, but no more than half of the actual contract amount.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Barb, second. Is there further discussion?
I would just ask if this passes, which we haven't voted yet. Bob, would you be willing to put up any signage that you gained support from the URA
Oh,
in your
absolutely.
project, something to denote that we subsidized your project? Something suitable, Carol, you know, that maybe we get into as we make some of these grants, that we have signage that says supported by or sponsored by, or
You know, there's a blank signboard above the front entrance of that building that is visible from the highway, of course, only if you're traveling west. But that would be
or even at your
a
entrance,
great
maybe,
place to say that.
you know, something small, whatever.
Part of Manitou's.
Because
It's
then it
significant.
starts advertising that we are supporting economic development in our jurisdiction.
I
Something,
think that's a good idea.
something that, you know, was tasteful, Carol, that you might work on.
Any other comments, discussion? Okay, I'm gonna call for the question. All those in favor, raise your hand.
I,
I'm a reluctant aye. I'm kind of in Alan's camp here, but opposed. Okay, so that is approved 4-1. And you can work with Jim in terms of the finalization.
Can you restate the motion? I couldn't hear it and I didn't know who actually made the motion.
Okay, Ann made the motion, and the motion was to approve. Barb seconded, and Barb added, and I'll consider this an amendment, that some sort of informational signage be included in the project, which would identify that the URA has sponsored this project.
Carol,
Right.
will work on that.
And Carol's going to work on that wording.
Okay.
State.
Okay, and it passed 4-1, and who opposed?
5 or half
Yeah.
of the.
Alan Delwich opposed.
It was up to
Okay,
25,000
thank you.
or half of the cost.
So up to 22,000?
No, it
Up to
was
25,000.
no more than
No more than 20,
25,000,
yeah.
but half
I see, okay.
of the
Whichever
actual,
is least.
right.
And that would be, Bob would have to get the work all done and then submit a bill?
I think that's the way our
Yes.
program works, yeah.
Yes, correct.
It's been a while since we've done one.
Yes. Before my time. Yeah. Okay.
Where did Jim say
you.
that information, your document was where you had previously allowed or called or allowed for us to come in for? But it's high school.
They were just.
Okay.
Hey, Jim,
Yeah, you do.
it's Alan
Yeah.
Gregory. Where did the URA previously disclose that it would accept requests for example, roofs, which I consider a capital expense, given my background, and it has nothing to do with facade? Where in our prior life did we, I mean,
Alan, isn't it in the write-up to the program? we have a write-up for the facade
Right.
improvement program. It's in there.
Okay, because I couldn't, I'm
Yeah.
having trouble reading, so I couldn't. Thank you.
Ready to move on to the next item, which is the pollination station funding request. And I see that Joan and Carl Stang are online. Joan, you're muted. There we go. And do you want to just summarize your request? It was in our packet, and I think most of us have read it.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, would you like, I did create a PowerPoint presentation for this. Would anyone like me to share my screen?
Sure, thanks.
Okay, so I guess I need the share screen. Let me figure this out. There it is. Hopefully you can see that. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. First of all, I'm Joan Stang. I've been a Manitou resident since 2010, and I just am a volunteer who's been helping with the pollination station planners in the URA area since its inception. I just happen to care about green spaces and coaxing people to linger, and also coaxing and supporting our pollinators. So you, like it was mentioned earlier, you all have the original funding request. I actually need to advance there we go. Advance my slides. This is a project that was started back in 2021. It's volunteer led. This is something that we can't fund on our own because, well, we're just volunteers who want to keep this going, but looks like the project manager who's been helping with this, who's Melody Dougherty, she actually made a request to the city of Manitou to help with ongoing efforts to continue these stations, and both the financial assistance that was requested and the man hours to keep them going and maintained and watered was denied by the city. So we're just relying on volunteers and intergovernmental organizations to partner with us so we can keep this going. So the other things to mention that's noteworthy would be that Manitou does have a Tree City USA status or designation. We're also the world's first certified municipal pollinator district and the first municipality with a climate crisis ordinance, which is called Resolution 1919 commitment to continue these types of efforts in our community. And worth noting would be that Manitou is being used as a pollinator district template throughout the state. So just a quick overview. I would assume most of you know where these little planters are located. They're along the main avenue near Becker's. There's 12 planters. They go from about like Lulu's area and the what is it, Jade Dynasty, and a little bit east by Park Road Lodge. There's about 8 volunteers who continue to step up and help us do the planting and the maintenance and the watering. And we'll cover their names here in the next slide. So the amount of funds we're requesting would actually be $600. This is a figure that Melody had thrown out when her and I first talked about this, and I basically raised my hand to volunteer to write up the funding request. I know that the quote that we did procure from Rick's Garden Center was over that. It was a little over $800. You have that in your packet in that original funding request. But our thought is that, well, first of all, if Melody, since she's the executive director for the Manitou Pollinators, if she receives the funds, Manitou Pollinators is actually a nonprofit, so we could actually provide that document so we could have the tax waived, so that would subtract the $64.90, And then the other thing is, it's possible we could get away with a smaller sized blanket flower so that it's not a gallon size. So that would reduce the cost per plant. But all told, we need about 5 plants per pollinator planter. So the plan is to, once again, replicate what we did last year. So last year we had a native species ornamental grass in the center. So we need 12 of those. And then the money would also be spent to purchase the blanket flowers, which would go on opposite corners. And then 2 other type of flowers per container, which would be the prairie wine cup flower. And those seemed to work out nicely last year. We also need a few materials to prep the soil and help with hydration retention. So that would be the polymer crystals and then the mycorrhiza, which is actually some food for the roots. So the plants can kind of double in size by the end of the year or what have you. The other thing is that we are not asking for funds to cover any labor costs nor cover the cost of water. We know that the former business that was occupying where Quality Inn is, they were kind enough to let us use water from their outdoor spigot. Melody has talked to the new owners at Quality Inn, and they're willing to help us out again. And then there's a lot of volunteers who just bring water straight from home. I'm one of those people. I just find it easier to fill up my little gallon jugs and just bring them down. I actually usually come down with an e-bike and I can carry that easily. We are appreciative for the volunteers who continue to step up to help. Folks are just doing this out of the kindness of their hearts and because we care about green spaces and keeping our east end of town looking beautiful. I also wanted to cover the maintenance schedule and overview of the volunteers who are helping to keep this going. Yesterday, we had on our schedule to actually decide when we were going to plant. So we'll be determining that soon. We usually like to wait until after the final frost for the winter season before we actually plant anything. That way we don't lose any plants. The other thing is that the care actually happens between the months of May and October. And volunteers are asked to water as many as 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how dry it is and how much wind, etc. As far as who are the volunteers involved, Melody Daugherty has been our project manager. She would be responsible to help with plant and materials purchasing, organizing the planning day that we'll all hopefully decide on very soon. She also helps to send out watering reminders. And she also is the person who typically is deployed whenever we have a severe storm come in. A lot of times we have hail that comes through early in the year after the plants are in the planters, and they have to be wrapped with some kind of burlap or something. And then a lot of times if there's a really high wind, those can damage the plants. So she'll come and wrap burlap around the plants to help protect those so they can get through that extreme weather. And then of course she's helping with the tracking of just our pollinator district goals, because she helped our city become a municipal pollinator district. Then, of course, I'd like to mention folks who have stepped up to continue helping. That would be Susan Watkins, Barb Winter, hi Barb, Holland Temple, Alice Barnett, Laura Allen, Carol Campbell, Lynn Wilson, and myself. So that would be the list of volunteers who are helping with this awesome project. And then, of course, I wanted to include a few words actually that were created by Becca Sickbert and also Melody. They collaborated to articulate what benefits our community receives from these beautiful pollinator planters, and as well as the help they provide to our pollinators. This can all be found on the Crane website. It helps with streetscape beautification. We inject greenery and potential to add shade areas. It helps promote economic vitality when you create those green spaces that kind of coax people to want to linger and hang out. It also provides more habitat and nutrition for our local pollinators. I'm not going to read the whole list, but it's no secret that pollinators are very important to helping to pollinate various Colorado flowering plants with fruit and seed production. I made a typo, sorry about that. And of course, if we don't do our part to help support our pollinators, their lifespans and just existence is being threatened. And then also the planters in this area actually provide a feeding corridor for these insects. Please note in the packet, I did articulate that each volunteer has been asked to track when they actually show up and water and tend and care for these beautiful planters. And one of the questions that's asked is to track when we actually see a pollinator. So we've seen honeybees, we've seen moths and flies and other types of pollinators. So this is working. We'd like to keep it going. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll do my best to answer. And like I said before, I'm just someone who cares about these green experiences in our community. And I also care about our pollinators. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Joan. Anybody on the board
Yes.
have questions or
Yeah.
comments, Alan?
Yeah, Joan, I'm curious, why did you only ask for the 600? Why didn't you ask for the full amount?
I know it's, well, I'll tell you, Alan, why. I assume that's Alan asking the question. Melody and I had this conversation, back in December? And then she had to leave to go to Canada and didn't even have a chance to look at my presentation before I submitted it to Jim Reese for the URA board for this meeting. And the other thing I was considering was, well, if we can get the tax removed and perhaps purchase blanket flowers, even from another pollinator partner nursery, it's possible we could get those blanket flowers in a smaller container than the gallon. So that would bring the price down. We may have some extra food on hand. I don't know. And the other thing that I was told, I actually found out in an email, was that Annie Schmidt, who's also part of this, she's going to, she already did this. She applied for a Manitou Garden Club grant request. I don't even know what the amount is. So I'm thinking, well, if she got that, which I don't know yet, because I haven't heard, then that would take care of that other $200 if our expenses come to $800. So that's kind of why. It's just it's a figure we had already talked about before. And so I didn't ask for the full amount, Alan.
We're not greedy.
No,
No.
not agree.
Well, my next question is, like, this is Alan again.
Okay.
Would the gallon plants actually be more attractive? Or, I think, we're talking about enhancing the area. So I'm just curious, like, if we're
You know what?
scrimping to save
I
money.
think so. I think fuller and, is better visually. That's how I see it. I know from like a planting perspective, they always talk about fillers, thrillers, and spillers. I know we can't do much with spillers on this with these planters because they are metal. So we tend to tuck for instance, the prairie wine cup through the grass and the other plants so they don't burn by the end of the day, because it gets really hot in metal. But you're right, Alan. I think more mature, fuller plants would just make it look more beautiful.
Other questions or comments? I have a question. Do the plants that were planted last year, they don't overwinter even though they're perennials?
Good question. Yeah, we didn't continue watering through the winter. It's just another thing is you don't want to freeze the roots. If you water it and then well, there's going to be a hard freeze that evening. So some folks were encouraged, if they wanted to go ahead and remove the grass, the ornamental grass, to winter them over like at their home or what have you. I'm not sure how many people did that. I mean, I've been out there to look at the planters. It doesn't really look like any of those were wintered over, but I mean, that could be a possibility, but that, once again, that's more volunteer hours and work that we're asking folks to do.
Okay, thank you.
As
Comments?
as a volunteer, I don't know if you want me to abstain from voting on this, but I would actually, along your line of comment, I would ask Joan to modify her request that we do increase it a little bit higher. And I would say that for a second reason, because as a volunteer, I experienced this last season. I think it's happened twice, 2 seasons. And I take care of, with my neighbor, we cover stations 9 and 10, which are in front of the quality in now, the bus stop.
Mhm.
And on two seasonal occasions, my plants have been ripped out. So in some regard, there's some, and just in normal care, some of these don't survive and we'll go back and replant
Mhm.
missing plants or dead plants. So I would just suggest, Joan, we ask for closer to the $800 or $900 number. And in that regard, as it was granted and whether it's paid, we need it in the front end, not the back end. And if there were funds left over, we could carry them over to a subsequent season if that meets with the committee's approval. So that's how I would view funding this project if you're in support of it.
Other comments?
I definitely agree that they ought to ask for what they need.
I agree, and I'm not opposed to having a budget that's allows replanting if plants are removed. And I certainly would like to see the larger size as Alan suggested. Alan.
Yeah, I just like to move that we approve $900 for this effort. I think it's great. You know, when you look at all the volunteer effort, this is really good use of our economic development money, in my opinion.
Okay, is there a second? And second? All those in favor and
Do I need to abstain?
no.
No, I don't think so.
Don't want you to abstain.
Don't have a yes
Do you get a kickback?
I can't say yeah.
Kickback, yeah.
Okay, all in favor, and the motion, Jim, for your minutes is to grant a $900 grant to the pollination standing station funding. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion is carried unanimously.
Can I just add a closing remark?
Yeah.
And not to put a damper on this, because I think we're very grateful, but I really believe that the city ought to give us further consideration on this project because, you know, into 3 or 4 years of volunteering, it is laborious to haul labor down from wherever we live, down the hill, John, to water these plants and contend with the trash. We were the ones that asked for a trash receptacle at the bus stop because trash was overflowing and we're trying to beautify our area. So, you know, if Nancy were here, I would put a bug in her ear, but we need to really lean on the city to be more supportive of this project in our zone.
Agree.
Okay.
Okay, next item, the Fountain Creek.
John, I got a quick question before Joan gets out of there. Farley called me yesterday and apparently, I don't know why she's involved and but apparently the city is thinking about working on possibly relocating some of the planters. Joan, do you know anything about that? Because she said that there was some talk about possibly moving a couple of the planters over to Fields Park. And I didn't know if you knew anything about that, but I thought, well, wait a minute, the URA board should weigh in on that because, you know, we felt that locating those planters were kind of put there in lieu of not being able to put any trees in. So, Joan, do you know anything about that?
No, sir, I'm not privy to that discussion. Haven't heard anything before now.
Okay, yeah, it seems like there's like two different approaches going on here. I didn't know why anybody would want to move them. Farley thought it was regarding, because it's so hot in that corridor, that the plant survival would be better in the park, but that kind of defeats the purpose of why we did them in the first place.
Well, I mean, the URA bought those planters. Becca coordinated that purchase.
Right.
And so I think we have a certain ownership in that regard. I just think that requires broader discussion if any of that city discussion is going on.
Agree. Thank you, Joan.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're
Thank
grateful.
you. Thank you to all your
Appreciate it.
volunteers.
Thank you.
Okay, Ally, you want to come up? And, okay.
Here, should I?
How about if you
Got it.
sit here, we can record you. And those online can hear what you say.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you for inviting me in this morning. My name is Ally Shook. I'm the Executive Director of the Fountain Creek Watershed Flood Control and Greenway District, a very long name, but we're very scrappy organization. So I'm here to talk to you about kind of what we do and how we could maybe collaborate in the future. So here is our home watershed. This is kind of your fourth grade Science 101 today. So we call it the chicken tender because it kind of looks like one. But this is a huge watershed. And this is 927 square miles of land and water that all drains to a common point. That's the definition of a watershed is that everything drains to a common point. We contain 2 counties, 7 municipalities. So up north, we have Monument and Palmer Lake. The watershed district footprint extends up to Green Mountain Falls, includes Manitou, Colorado Springs, Fountain, Pueblo. We have a huge elevation drop. Most of that is right in here, your own backyard, right? So it's a very extreme elevation change. We also have really erratic soils with the crumbly Pikes Peak granite, the sand out east. We have precipitation events where one day it'll hail at my house and nothing happens a mile across the way at downtown. So there's a lot of water users. And because of all these reasons, this is the second most studied watershed in the country. The first one is some canal in Florida that we don't really care about, but there's a lot of people who are watching and studying this watershed as it continues to change and evolve. Water doesn't know boundaries, right? So the water doesn't stop at Pueblo. It continues all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. So the water that we pull out of our local and mountain waterways eventually makes its way down to 200 different communities that use that same water resource starting here in Colorado. So we have a pretty big responsibility to our neighbors downstream. And I don't just mean in Pueblo, but again, all the way down to the ocean. So I think it's good to provide that perspective. I'm going to pick on Colorado Springs a little bit. This is what things looked like many years ago before any of us were here. What's missing? Trees. Yeah, we're in a high desert here. So we have quite substantially modified our environment. This is what things look like now. Colorado College. Yep, right downtown. So this is now what we have. And how in the world were we able to change the look of the community so dramatically? It's because of water. And it only happened because, and this is the Colorado Springs Utilities water supply system, but I think it's good to have an understanding of the complexities. It's one of the most complex systems in the country as well. So fortunately, the people that were here before us looked to the west and said, you know, there's a bunch of snow in those mountains there. And we could probably bring that to town pretty easily downhill with some pipes. And so that's what they did. We've got 4 tunnels that are dug into the Continental Divide. We have pipelines that go from Turquoise Lake down to Twin, then over here, Pikes Peak. We've we've got several storage systems. We've got a north and south slope and Northfield system. Those are the reservoirs on Pikes Peak. Of course, we also have Rampart Reservoirs, a large storage reservoir for us. And most recently, we had Colorado Springs Utilities has water rights in Pueblo Reservoir that they never have pulled on. And so they wanted to finally pull the trigger and build this southern delivery system. That's the last biggest project that utilities has done. Over 20 years in the making, just the permitting, the landowner negotiations. And one of those negotiations, Pueblo County said, okay, you're going to take the water up from Pueblo Reservoir as you're due, but what's going to happen if we continue to import more water into Fountain Creek? Where does it ultimately go? It goes back into Fountain Creek. So we have all this imported water from the western slope to feed our, growing community here. We've got more water coming from Southern Delivery System, and it all goes into Fountain Creek. Once the wastewater treatment plant does their thing, they return the water to Fountain Creek. And so that means a huge increase in volume. Much more water than ever flowed in this creek. In fact, Fountain Creek used to be an intermittently flowing waterway. Certain parts of times of the year, it didn't flow. But now we've changed the hydrology so much that it's a constantly flowing creek. And so because of that, Pueblo County said, okay, Springs Utilities, you can build this pipeline, but you're going to have to invest $50 million in projects that will protect Pueblo County from the return flows. So that's one of the ways we got some money to do our work, which I'll speak to that a little bit later. Here's your reservoir. This is Manitou Springs Reservoir, collecting water from a 30-acre sub watershed, still within Fountain Creek. 720 acre feet of water storage, and this is off limits to recreation because it is such a precious resource for this community. So going back to kind of changes on the landscape, when we have those changes, we take our meadows and grasslands and turn them into hard surfaces that can't let water soak in. It immediately shows up on the environment in our creeks. So we see these very characteristic, highly eroded walls. I've seen this up on the North Academy, the Air Force Academy property, Monument Creek up there. This is the frost wall. This has kind of been our poster child for the last 15 years. So the water rises. It's very flashy. It becomes very powerful, and it just works its way down, eroding these cliffs just like a glacier does. And so when that water eventually slows down, more typically down in Pueblo County, oh my goodness, I just went to, more typically in Pueblo County, that water is going to slow down and dump out all the sediment. And that water, the velocity slows, we see the sediment show up downstream. This is an example of before Bass Pro and all the development happened up there. They were just starting to develop. This is the Monument Branch. It flows into Monument Creek. Behind these trees, they put in an apartment complex. And this is prior to more rigorous stormwater development standards that Springs has. But here's August 2003. Just 2 years later, because the development wasn't properly managed, this creek is blown out. It's choked out by sediment due to erosion upstream. And this is probably a $500,000 fix just for this tiny little stretch. We have over 50 creeks just in Colorado Springs alone. You've got several here in Manitou. So each one of these waterways are seeing the impacts of changes in our environment. Other things we're worried about is pollution. That's why we do a lot of trash cleanups. This is a representation of DDT and PCBs, but this is another kind of new element we're having to deal with. That's the PFOAs. Those long chain carbons that you cannot break apart, and it's bioaccumulating in our bodies. The Colorado Sun did an article last year and said, "Oh, Colorado CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, did a study on many reservoirs from the Alpine to Cheeseman to little ones above us here, and 100% of the fish they tested had the PFOAs in them. Kind of frightening. We have a lot of issues with E. coli in our waterways, and that's from many different sources. There was a study done here in Manitou that proved a lot of that came from birds. And that was many, many years ago. I'd be curious to have that study redone. We also know there's the human elements. There's the horse stables that are right along the waterways in many of our creeks. And of course, the pet friendly, the dog friendly places we live in. People just need to remember to do their duty, as we like to remind people. If that's not enough, we're also dealing with a huge growth in population. We have the Colorado River battle that's going on right now. I love pulling this up. This is the Colorado Drought Monitor. Just Google that, and it'll show you week by week the changes in the drought in Colorado. Now, this was from March 28th, just last week. Front Range is looking good, but boy, we've still got some dry spots here, and you give this a month, and it could look completely different. Always a good thing I like to keep an eye on. Of course, this is still pretty close in my memory bank since I lived here during the fires, and you all too, I'm sure, still have some of that concern. We're not for the fires. Urban canopy, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. We've had a lot of uprooted trees with windfalls and even the forest fires, and we just are not keeping up with planting trees the way we should. So it's encouraging to hear that's happening here in Manitou Springs. And then other water quality issues, we kind of monitor those. So whose fault is it that we've got this erratic watershed with all these issues? Who can we blame? Ourselves. I like that answer. Whose responsibility is it? Is it mine because I'm the manager of this district? It's all my problem. That's why I can't sleep at night. No, here's what I think. Working at the watershed scale makes the most sense because these are varied, complicated, continuing, and unfunded watershed management issues. Manitou Springs City can only do so much with their limited budget. Same thing with Colorado Springs, Green Mountain Falls. Okay, we have one solution was the EPA, the Colorado Department of Public Health Environment, Lower Arc, Pueblo County came against Colorado Springs, and we're still in the middle of that lawsuit. That's one way that they felt they have been damaged by this unmitigated development and just you name it. And so there's currently this lawsuit, and the city has to go through their checklist and get all this work done, but they couldn't do it without the public because we have the Tabor rule. So the mayor at the time, the first round was Mayor Bach, and he said, no, I'm not going to support this tax. And so it didn't pass. Took a mayor, Mayor Suthers came in, tried to educate the community about the value, the need that we have to do this. And so they did, the taxpayers did pass that in Colorado Springs. So for us, what we did was back in 2006, we brought in Senator Salazar at the time, and he said, boy, this is a gem. You really need to take care of this. It's a resource, it's an amenity, it's an asset. And so 2 years, there were monthly meetings with all sorts of community leaders and engaged citizens to say, how should we move forward with this thing? Well, they said, well, we definitely need more funding and we definitely need more management. So we're stood up, we're a special district under the state legislature. So our job is to mitigate flooding, erosion, and sedimentation, address those water quality issues, improve drainage, protect open space, and develop recreation without a budget. Okay, we have a board of directors. This is very unique. Again, we are the only one working at that watershed scale. Our member governments do all contribute to the district's general fund based on population size. That's how it was set up. So Colorado Springs being the largest population, they cut us the biggest check. That way we can buy copy paper and outreach stickers for our events and things like that. So here's our representation. We also have a Pueblo County landowner. They are really seeing the brunt of everything that's happening upstream, as I'll show you soon. So that's how we're run. We have also a Monetary Mitigation Fund Advisory Committee. That committee works on that $50 million that we were given from Pueblo County to make sure that's used as efficiently and effectively as possible. We also have a technical advisory committee. We have development issues that come through that group that we can help work through some of those challenges. And then we have a citizen advisory group. CAG. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the Citizen Advisory Group. Citizen Advisory Group. So that, yeah, the CAG has a representative on the board. Yeah, thank you. So we didn't want to just throw a dart and say, well, there's problems all over the watershed. We'll just start somewhere. We wanted to study and look at the studies that were done since it's the most studied watershed. So there's to date, we did a lot of work to make sure we were using sound science and bringing in programs, projects, studies from other entities, from our member governments. So this is the planning work that's been done so far. And one example, we did a Monument Creek Watershed Restoration Master Plan back in 2016. That is now in its second phase. The Air Force Academy actually took a lot of those projects and implemented them. The city has implemented those. So even though the district didn't actually install these projects, we're setting our member governments up, for you to take and run with these. Here's the 35 million plus in construction projects to date that the district has done. And you'll notice that these are all south of the Fountain City line so that Pueblo County can receive maximum benefit from the $50 million. Now, when you fix a watershed, where do you think you should start? At the top. At the headwaters, exactly. So we're doing things a little bit backwards, but that's based on some of the permit conditions. That's one of the other challenges. So here's one of the projects we did. Highway 47, this is in Pueblo County, major infrastructure. So CDOT came to us and said, this bridge is at risk. Fountain Creek is, very erratic. It's always on the move, always eroding, and it was going after those pillars. So they said, hey, district, we'll be a funding partner with you, and let's prioritize this and get that done. So you can see before, here's all the old style of erosion control is concrete, or you might see car parts. And now we have actually buried 6 to 8 feet underground, these huge boulders, and that is to really stabilize that creek bed. We've planted thousands of willow and cottonwood trees, but you can see what we allowed for this creek to do its thing. It needs to rise up and have this floodplain. So when we have a high water event, it can slow out and spread out and do less damage downstream. So we're really proud of this project. Only 3,000 feet were done on either side, but it was $6 million. This work is not cheap. Unfortunately, Highway 47 sustained a significant amount of damage due to last year's weather. These were the stakes that were buried that you saw in the previous picture, some of them 3 to 4 feet tall. So there's 3 to 4 feet of sediment that's been dumped all over our plantings. Also, the rock wall has a huge gash in it, and so we were undermining. It's going behind where we want it to. We don't have a budget for maintenance work. So trying to figure this one out, if we can maybe get some support from the Army Corps of Engineers or something. It's just really hard to see this, very expensive work get blown out by really not even that big of a storm. It was just repeated last year. This is Highway 47, just in Pueblo County. So where the target is, you go across to Jerry Murphy Road, kind of in the middle part of town. Now, this is one of our banner projects. This is a private property owner, and you can see Fountain Creek comes barreling across and just bashes into the side here, and he's losing productive agricultural land. So that was another reason why this was prioritized. This one had over 15,000 tons of sediment every year being lost from this one little site. So again, $2 million for just 1,500 feet. What we did here, these are called bendway weirs. Again, we buried rock 6, 8, 12 feet deep. And what happens is the water will carry the sediment in here. The sediment slows down and drops off in these little in-between areas. And it's working exactly as we hoped it would. So really proud of that one. And this is one of our lessons learned, because we're constantly learning with this creek, what the heck can we do? We might have that in our playbook going forward. This is one that we've got on our plan for this fall. This is Southmore Drive, which is a little road in Fountain that's been closed for 4 years. Again, Fountain Creek comes bashing across and just barreling into here, eroding this wall. So we're going to build a 40-foot, 45-degree angle wall. We're going to pull the creek away from the properties here and build a new wetland and reconnect the hydrology there. Really technical work, but these folks, every time a rainstorm hits, they're just biting their nails and wondering what's going to crumble. And this fence is actually gone. This was from last year, and then now that fence is gone. And this is just, I love the spaghetti picture here. This just shows you year by year how erratic this waterway is. Just with all the increased volume in those soils that don't hold on to anything. It's a problem child. So let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about, we got a lot of project work to do, but my favorite part of our job is engaging with the public. We have a monthly liquid lecture series. We have the only Brew Shed Alliance in Colorado because the #1 ingredient in beer is water. Thank you. Okay. So we partner with our breweries. We have 25 of them that believe that they need water for their product. Manitou Brewing is one of them. So they'll host liquid lectures for us. Manitou has done a honey beer brew for us the last several years to raise awareness about pollinators. We have our next liquid lecture is actually a rooftop one at the OCC Brewery in Old Colorado City. Bring your binoculars. We'll be birding from the rooftop. So that'll be a really fun one. These are free. You get $1 off a beer, and it's a great way to learn in a casual way about our watershed. Of course, we have the Great American Cleanup. I'm pretty sure Manitou's signed up as they have been for years to participate in that event. We have Creek Week is our big one in the fall. We gave away a bunch of native plants last year. And then we're really proud that we were able to help support the certification of your world's first certification of the district. We've done pollinator parties and art contests, and that's me in my little bee costume at the pollinator party a couple years ago. So we like to have fun. Back to these challenges, we've got about $10 million left of the MMF money to spend to benefit Pueblo County. And then what? We've identified over $1 billion worth of work, and that's before this year's, who knows if it's going to be a fire season or a flood season. We'll wait and see. And we just do not have sustainable funding. Our neighbors to the north, Mile High Flood District do. Fort Collins does. Boulder does. What did it take for them to all get their funding? A natural disaster. And it is my hope that we can be a little bit more proactive and that it won't be devastating for us to do the right thing. But in kind of back to the positive side of things, this is our shared resource. And we do all have limited resources with the budgets we work with and the people that we have. We're on borrowed time. It's not if, but when the next fire, if, but when the next flood. There's been historic floods in this watershed going back to the beginning of time. What is happening here? Uh-oh. Guess I'm on borrowed time. Dear. Okay, maybe my battery. I think maybe the battery here. Let me show you guys. Yeah. No. Oh, there we go. Okay. Well, oh no, now I really did it. Okay, guys. Oh, I was really almost to my finale. Okay. We're just going to do this, just a good review in case you missed some. We have had Nancy Fortune on our Watershed District Board in the past as one of our small municipality reps. So we have that relationship. Collaboration is where it's at, guys. We're here to help. I'm here to open doors. It's really great to meet you, and I perused your wonderful website to see what you all do. And I think there's absolutely opportunities to do stuff together. So my thoughts are, how do we ensure that Fountain Creek stays clean and safe through your town here? How can we inspire behavior changes that will lead to healthy watershed for this community and those downstream? And then how do we protect it as the amenity that it is? Imagine Manitou without that waterway. That really is so critical to this town, and people, I think, see it as an amenity, but I feel like there's more opportunities there. So I'm just curious about, if you see a way to to collaborate. We can think on it. I just wanted to show you, this isn't Manitou Springs, this is Manitou Lake. I caught a little fish there earlier this year. Yeah.
Interdiction, this would be a big problem, with the homeless population. Where did that fit into this big picture of?
What we're doing? Absolutely. The unhoused population, it's not in our mandate to manage or deal with any of that, but is it influencing our work? Absolutely it is. Well, it's okay. There's a lot of, I think you can. I've started to say unhoused. I don't know. But I think it's a challenge that we all see, we all feel. There's no right solution. And so what we're doing for our citizen advisory group meeting on the 12th of April, we're bringing in West Side Cares, we're bringing in Homeward Pikes Peak, we're bringing in the homeless outreach team. You all are the service providers. Educate us about what you're doing and what could our role be? You know, I know when we do our cleanups, I'll hand a roll of garbage bags out to these folks. They don't want to live in filth. And they're really willing to help clean up the area if they have those bags. It's a really big issue. And I think the E. coli piece, you know, we've found toilet seats perched right over the creek. So we know that's happening. It's just part of us undervaluing our waterways. And it's a cultural shift. We have to make that change. And it's a slow boat to turn. Yep. And so what is Manitou doing about it? Is there enforcement? I haven't. Okay. Yeah, no, that'd be great. Mm-hmm.
It's great that we get that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. I'm happy to knock on their door and get on the agenda. Mm-hmm. Great. Mm-hmm.
I think it does need.
It does.
Yeah, speaking of E. coli and in the water, between Woodland Park and Manitou, there is no sewer system. Is that something being addressed or looked at or leaning on the county commissioners or someone? Because, you know, Chipeta Park is a myriad of
Oh my.
terrible, obsolete septic systems.
You're right. So I worked for a period of time with Colorado Springs Utilities, and there's the Arkansas Fountain Coalition for Urban River Evaluation, a group of regional, mainly wastewater providers, but folks in the region working on types of issues like this. We did an E. coli study and we looked at up and down Fountain Creek, you know, where are the hot spots? And boy, did you point right to that bullseye. And it's those antiquated, grandfathered in septic systems. It's the Pinecrest Stables that's right there on the creek. And so this was one of these studies that was done, and no one's taken that one off the shelf to move it forward. And the El Paso County Health Department barely has records of what septic systems are there or when they've been checked lately. So, you know, this could be one of the ways we can raise our voices up and say, you know, someone needs to work on this. And, you know, that's something that the watershed, we're here to be the voices. So yeah, I think a little pressure on the county commissioners, a little pressure on the county health department, because it's only getting worse. Great point. Great. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that you're not really taught about. You don't think about water unless it's in your basement, or the utility says you can only water 3 days a week, or, you know, until we have some major disaster. So I appreciate you allowing me to share a little bit of our world. And, you know, if you have thoughts or ideas, please do reach out. I brought you some goodies today, magnet, sticker, and some ways to save water. So.
Scene that you said looks like chicken finger.
Yeah.
To me, it looks like a fried shrimp.
Fried shrimp. Our chicken tender? Oh, where is it? Oh, I know I can't work the AV anymore. Here we go. Oh, this guy? Yeah. Maybe you're just ready for lunch.
Yeah.
Well, and you said you're up in Crystal Park?
No, I'm in Crystal.
Oh, Crystal Hills. Okay. Yeah. Great. Good. Well, again, thanks for your time. If there's any other questions, you guys can get a hold of me.
Yeah, I'll just second the idea of do this briefing for city council.
Yeah, for sure.
Off the wall question.
I like those.
People to the north who have sustainable funding,
Yes,
where's who provides the sustainable funding?
taxpayers by a mill levy.
Oh,
Each one of those communities put up a mill levy, and for Denver, they had the 1965, that was their big
Right.
horrific flood.
right.
And they just implemented it because those are the days before Tabor. But all these other disasters, you had to get the will of the voters. And if you don't live by a creek, if you haven't been impacted by something, we thought about going out this fall for a vote because it's the general election. We have those powers, but none of my board of elected official directors would be willing to ask their citizens to vote for that. In this economy, it's never been the right time for 15 years to ask for a vote. And again, I just hope we're not going to be too late when.
Yeah.
Right, there, I hope, sense of urgency. Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Yeah, very informative.
Thank you.
I see that we don't have a councilwoman today, so no liaison report. Is there any other business to discuss, Alan?
Yeah, I just want to follow up. Last month I brought up the idea of light and sort of threw out, what about the idea of dialing down the intensity in the URA? And I think someone commented that, CSU probably would not really like us to cut into their revenues or change things. And I had a conversation with Denise, and she said that there is precedent. We have done that in the downtown area where we've reduced the intensity, especially in the 800 block. And she said that if we were ever interested, we could get our representative from CSU to come and talk about possible strategies, either turning off some of the lights or putting different filters in. Some of it is pretty inexpensive. Some of it would cost money, but I just want to follow up that there are possibilities, and we had the other part of it was a discussion of, crime and safety. And that's why we have such a bright corridor, which is it's disappointing I'd say if you took a vote in Manitou, this would be one of the biggest detractors to our zone. And so it's just a thought in the future, if we are concerned about individual properties and their safety, there are ways to mitigate, to light up without lighting up the sky and lighting up the neighborhoods around, and that could conceivably be part of our site improvement program is, if someone feels insecure, even go down, look at the Starbucks, they have dark skies type lighting around their property. There are ways to light up an area without lighting up, without the big bulbs. Anyway, I just wanted to follow up with that.
And I would just mention that I think you heard that was the intent when we did it. If you look at that area versus the area to the east, there are no dark spots on the sidewalk. There are if you space them as far apart as they are to the east. So it was, again, totally intentional. I don't think it's worth a lot of further discussion, frankly, but that would be up to the board.
I guess I could add, maybe middle ground is, I found Ally's presentation quite informative.
Mhm.
Maybe at least annually, we invite someone in from CSU just to discuss issues in our zone, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the walkway or weren't they maintaining under the bridge, and who was doing that from the city? Like,
I don't know.
but I don't know whether we would invite them in for a discussion or
Well,
anything that's related.
We don't have a full board here,
Yeah.
and here's my take on this, and we had a limited discussion last month. To me, there are multiple facets to this issue. There's is there too much light issue? There's a community response to that. There's a business response, there's a historic design response. There's probably a technical response and a financial one as well. And perhaps if we could have an agenda item in a month or two where we could explore all of those facets, and then the board could perhaps give direction to whether we proceed to do something further or not. I found last week's discussion enlightening because I didn't know the history, which I appreciate now hearing, and I can understand both the neighborhood and business perspectives. And I don't know what the solution should be, or if we already have the solution. But if you, I mean, just take a look at the Dillon, for instance. We're going to have an opportunity to either continue the current streetscape, which we've assume we'll be able to participate in this discussion, but to continue the current streetscape that's been designed through the Dillon property, because we don't have the lighting fixtures there now along the street. And you could have a change, you could continue the same, you could do something different in the parking lot. There's a lot of opportunities there, and maybe this is a good precursor to that discussion. So I think my opinion is there's probably some more discussion needed. I don't pretend to have a position at this point.
Yeah, I think that, Denise indicated that our rep from CSU would be happy to come and discuss solutions or possibilities. So if we do decide to have this as a discussion item, I would think that would be a good time to at least have them, lay some
Attend as well.
their thoughts on it.
Jim, can you flesh this out a little bit and maybe put this on a future agenda?
Yeah, I can certainly reach out to Denise. I think, is it Bill Block or Bill Bach? That's the CSU rep. And I can get his contact and see when he's able to come to one of our meetings. And so we can, I think that's a good idea. I can set that up.
Yeah, we don't pay for the electricity. The city does.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, and we don't own the lights. Colorado Springs Utilities owns the lights.
Mhm.
I'm not sure it's our issue, frankly.
Okay.
I really don't think it is. We did what we did. It's done. But at this point, I think if anybody has an issue, it's the city, not the URA.
So do you feel that the city could just go ahead and discuss it and say, we're going to change the lighting in the URA and
City could do whatever they want. We did what we thought was appropriate at the time.
Okay.
But we really don't have an ongoing responsibility for those lights. It's the cities. The
Okay.
city took over the responsibility of paying for the monthly fees. Colorado Springs Utilities owns the lights.
Yeah.
We obviously don't have funds. If somebody wanted to retrofit, they shouldn't look at us because we have no funds. So I don't think it's our issue, frankly, but I'll let the
Well, I think it's probably still worthwhile for the board to have the discussion, and we'll see where that goes from there. That sound like a good solution?
that's good for me.
Any other business? Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. We're adjourned at 10:59. Thank you. Just so you know, I will miss the next 2 meetings because of travel. So I'll be sorry to miss this discussion.
You're going to be gone in July or, Yeah. Yeah, I'll be missing July too.